Just to brief on what we have already discussed, because this is a completely new chapter for you. So we have discussed the definition and the classification of benign versus malignant, and how do we classify benign and malignant based on the various characteristics, which include the cytological as well as the architectural and the tumor behavior like local invasion and metastasis. Then we've also started molecular basis of cancer, and the other things will be covered as we move ahead. So I've been telling you that these four topics may or may not be necessary, but I've discussed with senior professors. Seems like it has to be covered. So it's a part of the chapter. Actually, it is good if it is covered. So we'll go ahead with that as well. So regarding the molecular basis, I know we have already covered self-sufficiency, but I thought I'll just start from the beginning of molecular basis once again, excluding the self-sufficiency thing, because I thought a few more details need to be added before we proceed with the rest of the molecular basis. So this we have already discussed. So what is a molecular basis? What is happening to at the genetic level, which is leading to neoplasia? So we discussed that there will be genetic damage and there will be stepwise accumulation of mutations. Normally, genetic damage will lead to death of the cell by apoptosis or senescence. But in case of cancer cells, even with genetic damage, the cell does not die and it will continue to accumulate mutations, and this will lead to a carcinogenesis. So therefore, it is not the single mutation, but it is accumulation of multiple mutations in a stepwise fashion over time that leads to carcinogenesis. This we have already seen, the initial carcinogens that lead to the mutation in the normal cell, leading to the formation of a precursor cell with stem cell like properties, and acquiring of further mutations that leads to the development of the founding cancer cell that further diversifies. So this founding cancer cell initially divides and gives rise to a clonal population. Later it will develop, each subclone will have a different property. Some will be able to invade locally, some will be able to metastasize to a different site. So then it will finally lead to a genetically heterogeneous cancer. So what are all the targets for mutation or genetic damage? So the regulatory genes are the one that are mainly targeted. So one is the growth promoting or proto-oncogenes, the growth inhibiting tumor suppressor genes, the genes that regulate apoptosis, and the genes that are involved in DNA repair. So what happens when these genes are affected? So there is change in regulation of the cell cycle such that the cancer cell acquires several additional attributes, all of which are together called as hallmarks of cancer. So when those four types of genes, mainly those four types of genes, proto-oncogenes, tumor suppressor genes, genes involved in apoptosis, and genes involved in DNA repair. When these are affected, the cancer cell will acquire certain attributes, and this will lead to so these are the attributes or the hallmarks of the cancer cell. So the acquisition, so apart from these hallmarks, the 8 hallmarks, self-sufficiency, insensitivity to growth inhibitor signals, altered metabolism, evasion of apoptosis, limitless replicative potential, sustained angiogenesis, ability to invade and metastasize, and ability to evade host immune response. Apart from these 8, we will also discuss about genomic instability and cancer promoting inflammation. So the acquisition of genetic and epigenetic alterations that confer these hallmarks may be accelerated by these two. So all these changes may be accelerated by genomic instability and cancer promoting inflammation. So while we are discussing these hallmarks, we will also discuss at the end also about genomic instability and cancer promotion. Cell growth in normal conditions, by which it will be easy for you to understand the cell growth in cancerous conditions. So we need a growth factor that will act through a growth receptor and will lead to cell cycle progression. So we have to understand the concept of growth factors, growth factor receptors, and then what are the phases of cell cycle? and what are the components of the cell cycle. Why we are trying to understand this? Because either the growth factors or the growth factor receptor or the growth cell cycle components, either of these may be affected, which will lead to development of cancer. I mean, either of these could have developed mutations, which will lead to development. So these are the examples of growth factors: epidermal, transforming, hepatocyte, vascular endothelial, platelet derived, all these things. So, for example, what is the function? Just one growth factor, we will try to understand the function. So, epidermal growth factor activates the epidermal cells, keratinocytes, salivary glands, and also macrophages. So, it is a mitogenic. It will promote cell growth. It will stimulate formation of granulation tissue and migration. Okay. So, growth factors will promote cell division, cell migration, and also repair, granulation tissue reaction and repair. So these are the different growth factor receptor pathways. So growth factors should act on growth factor receptors. These receptors are present across the membrane. So usually they are transmembrane. So a factor acts, so for example, epidermal growth factor acting on the membrane epidermal growth factor receptor. So that is a different pathway. Okay. So we have different growth factor receptor pathways. So one is the receptor tyrosine kinase. So tyrosine kinase, the ligand binds to receptor tyrosine kinase, and this is one pathway. Another pathway is GPCR, that is the G protein coupled receptor, which is present in the membrane, binds to the specific ligand. This is one pathway. Here you see it is a tyrosine kinase pathway is involved. Then you have the Notch ligand. Then we have this WNT pathway. So why I'm showing you this is there are different pathways of growth factor, growth receptor interactions that lead to signal transducing molecules and transcription. So in a given malignancy, either of these pathways may be affected. So therefore, as we discussed in the last class, either of these pathways can be targeted for drug therapy. So coming to the cell cycle, we all know what is a cell cycle. G1, that is the gap one. Then we have the synthetic phase where all the components that are required for the cell division. Before cell divides, all the components of the cell have to be duplicated. So that happens in the synthetic phase, then the gap two, then the actual mitosis, and then cell division. So, so while transition from G1 to S, so this is the G1 phase and this is the synthetic phase. During this transition, there is a checkpoint. So at this checkpoint, if the P53 or any molecule detects a DNA damage, what happens is the cell will be temporarily stopped. The cell cycle will be temporarily stopped, and the DNA repair will occur, and then only the cell progresses further into the cell cycle. Similarly, we have a G2M checkpoint. Again, there will be check for any unduplicated DNA or damaged DNA. So if it is there, then there will be cell cycle arrest, repair of the DNA, and then only cell cycle progression. Suppose the DNA cannot be repaired, then the cell will be. So these checkpoints are lost in a cancer cell. So what are the components of cell cycle? So what we have is what is required for cell cycle progression. We require cyclins, these are components, and cyclin dependent kinases, these are the enzymes. So these complexes are required for cell cycle progression at different stages of the cell cycle. So we have cyclin D, cyclin E, and cyclin A. Then dependent kinases, we have CDK4, CDKC2, A2, 6, 2, and 1. Okay. So once, please, whoever is creating a disturbance, please mute yourself. All students, please mute yourself. So for cell cycle progression, we need cyclins and cyclin dependent kinases. But that does not mean the cell will progress unlimitedly. Unlimited cell cycle division won't be there. At certain point or after a certain point of division, we need inhibition of. So what will inhibit these? cyclin dependent kinase inhibitors. So what are the examples? P16, P15, P18, P19, P21. All these are CDK inhibitors. Apart from this, you can also see that during this G1 to GS transmission, G1 to synthetic phase transition, this is also regulated by retinoblastoma. So the P retinoblastoma gene is the inactive form, whereas a retinoblastoma is the active form. Retinoblastoma is a tumor suppressor gene. It will prevent cell cycle progression. So in the active form, it will prevent G1 to S transition. Whereas in the events it is converted to inactive form, the cell cycle progression occurs. So here in this picture, I just want you to remember the cell cycle components. In that, cyclins and CDK4 are required for cell cycle progression, where CDK inhibitors and retinoblastomas are required for arrest of the cell cycle or control of cell cycle division. Therefore, you can understand cell cycle progression promoting components like cyclins and CDKs, there will be oncogenesis. Or when there is loss of function of the tumor suppressors or the components that control cell cycle, like retinoblastoma and CDK inhibitors, then there will be also oncogenesis. So, what are the different types of genetic alterations that affect these genes? So, it can be a gain of function, a loss of function. Or obviously, if there is a gain of function for oncogenes, it will promote oncogenesis. And obviously, if there is loss of function of tumor suppressor genes, it will also promote cell cycle progression and oncogenesis. Then the other types are the gene rearrangements and the amplifications. So these are point mutations, right? So the self-sufficiency in growth signals, this we have already discussed. So the normal growth factor signaling pathways in this, the growth factor binds to the receptor. This will promote the this will convey signals via the signal transduction molecules. And this will convey signals to nuclear transcription factors. And this will promote cell growth. So this picture, if you carefully understand this picture, you will understand almost entire molecular basis. So here we have the growth factor. So if the growth factor is mutated, there can be oncogenesis, gain of function. Then you have the growth factor receptor. If there is constitutively active, which means it does not require a growth factor, automatically it is stimulated to function. So then also you will have oncogenesis. What will this do? This will activate the signal this will convert the inactive signal transducing molecule RAS to active RAS. So when there is active RAS, again, if it is constitutively active, it will promote oncogenesis. So here we understand that inactive to active, this requires conversion of action of growth factor receptors. But active is again becoming inactive by the action of by the breakdown of GTP to GDP. So this will require the function of gaps and also inactivation by hydrolysis of GTP. So that is GTPase. So active RAC will become inactive by the function of gaps and GTPase. So obviously when there is loss of function of GTPase and gaps, then the RAS is fixed in an active state, which means it will continue to promote cell cycle progression. See, normally what happens is after cell division, after the requirement is met, there are signals conveyed which will stop the cell cycle. So the active, the oncogenes, the proto-oncogenes will all become inactive. But in oncogenesis, this inactivation will not occur even after the requirement is met. There is continuous cell cycle progression because of loss of function of the tumor, the cell cycle controlling genes like the GAPs and the GTPs. So further signal transduction occurs via these different pathways, mTOR, PIK3, AKT or RAF and MAP kinase. So these are also growth promoting cell signal transducing molecules. So once there is gain of function, there is constitutive activation and cell cycle progression in any of these. Here there is a negative action of PTEN. So PTEN is also a tumor suppressor gene. So it inhibits the function of these signal transducing molecules. So obviously, when there is loss of function of PTEN, there will be loss of control of these signal transducing molecules, and there will be promotion of cell cycle. Then coming to the transcription part. So we have discussed here the cyclin Ds. The cyclin Ds will promote cell cycle progression. So once there is cell transcription, it will promote the, so this is MYC is a transcription factor. It will promote the D cyclins and cell cycle progression. So the pro-growth genes are the growth factor receptors, signal transducers, transcription factors, and cell cycle components. So when these genes are mutated, they promote uncontrolled growth. This we have already discussed. So the major signaling pathways are the receptor, all these pathways which we have already seen this picture. These are all the major receptor pathways, of which the most frequently mutated is the receptor tyrosine kinase pathway. So we have seen growth factor excess, growth factor receptor constitutive activation, signal transducer constitutive activation, the most common being RAS. Then we have seen the other tyrosine kinases, which are also having a growth promoting activity like a growth factor receptor, but they're not on the receptor side. They're in the cellular cytoplasmic, not in the receptor. So we have seen the examples, the CML. So what is happening in CML? A translocation is occurring between chromosome 9 and chromosome 22. This is leading to the formation of a hybrid gene that has tyrosine kinase activity, and uh, this will promote uncontrolled growth. Okay, so this example is chronic myeloid leukemia, and we know the drug that blocks this BCR-ABL activity, the tyrosine kinase inhibitor, is imatinib. So, concept of oncogene addiction. So, what happens? Oncogene addiction. So, the tumor cells are highly dependent on the activity of one or more oncogenes. See, I have told you already, one mutation is not sufficient for occurrence of cancer. There is stepwise accumulation of mutations. However, despite this, there is one on the cell for a cancer to progress. So despite accumulation of mutations in other cancer-associated genes, signaling through BCR-ABL tyrosine kinase is required and very much essential for most of the CML tumor cells, and therefore we target this BCR-ABL tyrosine kinase activity with an imatinib. However, as I told you, this will not lead to cure. The therapy must be continued indefinitely. Because the fusion gene is persisting forever, you're not removing the fusion gene, you're only inhibiting the activity of the protein that is the product of this fusion gene. The gene is always there, means the cancer gene is present still in the, even if you're using the drug. Only thing is you're preventing the protein product activity. So this is the hybrid gene. This is leading to the product. The protein product is a tyrosine kinase. So this is being inhibited, not the gene. The gene is not being targeted. The protein is being targeted. So the gene is present. You prevent the function of the protein. So other examples where you have this kind of non-receptor tyrosine kinase activity are the JAK2 point mutations, which target the JAK-STAT pathway, not the tyrosine kinase pathway, the JAK-STAT pathway. And similar to CML, chronic myeloid leukemia, there is excessive proliferation of these cells. Examples are polycythemia vera and essential thrombocythemia. So in CML, the excessive proliferation is the myeloid cells, whereas in polycythemia, the excessive proliferation is the red blood cells. And in essential thrombocythemia, the excessive proliferation is platelets and megakaryocytes. Okay. So this is a different pathway, the JAK-STAT pathway, but again, uh, non-receptor tyrosine kinase activity. So now we move on to the transcription factors. So we have finished growth factors, growth factor receptors, signal transducing molecules, and the non-receptor tyrosine kinase activity. Now we are moving on to the nuclear site. We finished the cell membrane. cell cytoplasmic molecules. So we are looking at the nucleus, so transcription factors. So what are the examples of transcription factors? MYC, MYB, JAN, FOS, REL. Out of this, MYC gene is the most commonly involved in humor tumors. So everywhere I'm telling you, there are so many pathways, so many molecules, but which is the most common? For example, in growth factor receptor pathway, I'll be telling you, receptor tyrosine kinase is the most commonly involved. Signal transducers, so many molecules are there. Most common is RAS. Transcription factors, so many are there. Most common is MYC. So how does it act? How does MYC act? Via it affects the D cyclins. It induces the Warburg effect, which we'll be dealing with later. It upregulates the between stem cells and somatic cells. Stem cells have a limitless replication. So loss, gain of function of these and loss of function of these. Now we move over to the insensitivity to growth inhibition. That is loss of function of tumor suppressor gene in detail. That means we are trying to understand the function of P53 and retinoblastoma in a clinical context. In a sense, there are some infections that target these tumor suppressor genes and lead to loss of function of these genes and therefore lead to cancer. So infection leading to carcinogenesis. So we'll deal with a few tumor suppressor genes. Retinoblastoma, P53, STK11, BRCA1, BRCA2, APC. There are like so many tumor suppressor genes, P10 and all. We'll deal only with a few which are very much essential and which are very common and which have clinical correlates. So how do they act? Tumor suppressor. They act through a network of checkpoints that prevent the uncontrolled growth or cell cycle progression DNA replication. So what did I tell you in the cell cycle? We have a G1S transition checkpoint. We have a G2M transition checkpoints. So the tumor suppressor genes act at these checkpoints, see if there is any DNA damage, try to repair them. If it cannot be repaired, it will lead to apoptosis. So when they detect a genotoxic stress, they will shut down proliferation. When they see that the oncogene is expressed in some normal cell, this will cause quiescence or senescence, temporary cell cycle arrest or permanent cell cycle arrest. Senescence is permanent cell cycle arrest. Normally, if an oncogene is expressed, so if an oncogene is expressed in a normal cell, this will lead to quiescence or senescence. What happens in the cancer cell when the oncogene is expressed? There is uncontrolled proliferation. But in normal situation, there will be senescence or quiescence. Then these will also lead to cells to enter into a post-mitotic. After repeated cell divisions, the cell cannot divide anymore. So this is called the post-mitotic differentiated pole. Okay. Then, if there is a genetic damage that cannot be repaired, or if there is anoikis, usually there is cell-to-cell addition, and also the cells will be adhered to the underlying basement membrane. If you remember the cell structure of epithelial cells, the epithelial cells they are adhering to the underlying basement membrane. So, under any condition, if the cell attachment to basement membrane is lost, which is called anoikis, the tumor suppressors will direct the cell towards apoptosis. So, expression of oncogenes, anoikis, or genetic damage that cannot be repaired will lead to the cell into apoptosis under the influence of tumor suppressor genes. Also, STK11. So this tumor suppressor gene will prevent cell growth when nutrient and energy levels are low. BRCA1 and BRCA2. How are they acting as tumor suppressor genes? Because these are DNA repair genes. So when there is DNA damage, they will repair the DNA. So there will be no accumulation of mutations. So they will ensure that the gene is stable. There is no mutation. Thus, what happens? Tumor suppressor genes can affect any of the various hallmarks of carcinogenesis. Try to remember the hallmarks of carcinogenesis: self-sufficiency of signals, So tumor suppressors are preventing the self-sufficiency by blocking the oncogene activity. Then aviation of apoptosis. Suppressor genes are promoting the cells towards apoptosis. So they are blocking the hallmark of carcinogenesis. Then we have Warburg effect, altered metabolism. STK11 is inhibiting the Warburg effect. Then genomic instability. BRCA1 genes are making sure that the genome is stable. So when the tumor suppressor genes are lost, all the hallmarks of carcinogenesis are promoted. So the protein products of the tumor suppressor genes will act as regulators of cell response to DNA damage. They can act as cell surface receptors, transduction molecules, transcription factors, cell cycle inhibitors. So just like oncogenes can be growth factor receptors, signal transduction molecules. Similarly, tumor suppressor genes can also act at any of these levels. So now we will discuss the most important aspects, that is retinoblastoma and P53. So retinoblastoma is called a governor of proliferation. It is a key negative regulator at the stage of G1S transition, which you have already seen. And it is directly or indirectly activated in most human cancers. So under the effect of growth factors, like epidermal growth factor, they activate the cyclins. So this will lead to hyperphosphorylation of retinoblastoma. So this will lead to release of this E2F product, and there will be transcriptional activation and cell cycle progression. So in cell cycle progression, retinoblastoma is an inactive state. The cells are in mitosis. What happens when there is cells growth inhibitor under the effect of TGF beta, transforming growth? The CDK inhibitors are here, the cyclins are activated. Here the CDK inhibitors are activated. This will inhibit the cyclins. So this will lead to this will maintain the retinoblastoma in a hypophosphorylated state, which is the active state. So in a quiescent cell, which means a cell which is resting, it is not dividing. A resting cell, a quiescent cell, will have retinoblastoma in its active form, which is hypophosphorylated form. In this form, it will bind E2F, and this will prevent cell cycle progression or transcription. So what happens? So when do you get oncogenesis? If there is loss of function of CDK inhibitor, loss of function of retinoblastoma, or gain of function of cyclins. So when does this occur? In which infection is retinoblastoma function affected? Human papilloma virus infection is responsible for cervical cancer in 95% of the cases. So this virus has a protein called E7. So this E7 will go and bind this pocket of it. This is retinoblastoma, okay? So the E7 will go and bind this pocket and it will release E2F. So once the E2F is released, what is happening? Once E2F is released, cell cycle progression is occurring. So that is what human papilloma virus does. I hope you all understand. It's a simple concept. I'm telling you repeatedly about cyclins and CDKs, so it will be easy to remember. So now we move on to so that is why retinoblastoma is called a governor of proliferation. It will prevent proliferation. Now moving on to TP53, it has got a bigger title. It's called the guardian of genome. So this is the most frequently mutated gene in human cancers. You have to remember the chromosome numbers of certain genes, and once a gene is TP53, 17p. TP53 is located on 17p. So it is the guardian of genome. So look at, so we'll see how it is a guardian of genome. So when a cell is exposed to carcinogens or mutation, some mutagens, environmental exposure to some kind of radiation, ionizing radiation is exposed. So when the cell is exposed to carcinogens, a normal cell, which has a normal P53 function, this cell is exposed to a carcinogen. So there will be some DNA damage. So what happens? I told you what happens when there is DNA damage. A cell P53 will detect this DNA damage. It will prevent cell cycle progression. It will cause arrest of cell cycle. So what does it do? P53 accumulates, it binds to the DNA, and it will lead to the cell, it will lead the cell into senescence, permanent cell cycle arrest. Further, it will activate the CDK inhibitor. It will lead to cell cycle arrest at the G1 phase. It will activate the DNA repair genes like GAD45. So simultaneously there is cell cycle arrest, and simultaneously there will be DNA repair. If there is successful repair, the normal cells are restored. Suppose if the repair fails, it will activate apoptosis. It will activate the apoptotic gene BAX, and it will lead to apoptosis of the cell. So there is no danger. So P53 normal functioning, once the cell is exposed to carcinogen, it will promote the cells towards senescence, or it will promote cell cycle arrest with simultaneous DNA repair. If the repair fails, it will direct the cell towards apoptosis. So we don't have any danger. But what happens in the cells which have loss of function of P53? DNA damage accumulates. So once the DNA damage accumulates, there is no cell cycle arrest, no DNA repair, no senescence. The mutation will accumulate and it will lead to proliferation of mutant cells and development of malignancy. So again, the human papilloma virus cervical cancer, this will have another protein which is called E6 protein. This will bind to the normal functioning P53 and it will promote its degradation. So there is loss of function of P53 in human papilloma virus associated cervical cancer, and this will lead to cervical cancer occurrence. So you have certain familial inherited conditions where there is mutant retinoblastoma, which is called the familial retinoblastoma. You have some conditions where there is P53 mutation that is inherited, which is Li-Fraumeni syndrome. In fact, you have so many other syndromes. That is only two examples. So this is the list of tumor suppressor genes, APC. So this gene is mutated as an inherited condition in familial adenomatous polyposis, adenomatous polyposis coli syndrome. Okay, so there are like more than hundreds of polyps present in the colon. Then you all know this condition called neurofibromatosis, where there are multiple neurofibromas throughout the body. So this is also because of mutation in fibroma 1 gene. So those who have familial retinoblastoma syndrome, they have bilateral retinoblastomas in both the eyes, and they're also susceptible to these are other VHL, which will lead to RCC. Then you have TP53 inheritation, lead from a number of cancers occur in these. BRCA1, this is important. So BRCA1 gene can also be inherited in the germline. The mutation can be inherited in the germline. So this will lead to familial breast cancer. So individuals who have a germline mutation of BRCA1, BRCA1, they can develop breast cancer at a very young age, and their progenitors, their children also have a tendency to develop breast cancer at a very young age. Not very young age means 30s like that. So we have finished P53, we have finished RB retinoblastoma. We will deal briefly with APC also. And in relation to this, the concept of contact inhibition. So while trying to understand the concept of contact inhibition, we will come across the molecules E-cadherin, beta-catenin, APC, and WT. So if you remember your first year, E-cadherin is a cell surface adhesion molecule that promotes adhesion between two epithelial cells. Beta-catenin is a cytoplasmic molecule that is attached to the cytoplasmic tail of E-cadherin. APC is a tumor suppressor gene. WNT is a growth factor. So this is a resting cell. You have this WNT growth factor receptor at the cell membrane. Between the individual cells, you have the E-cadherin cell-to-cell adhesion molecule. This beta-catenin molecule is attached to the cytoplasmic tail. So this is the tumor suppressor gene molecule APC. So in a resting cell, APC binds the beta catenin and forms a macromolecule. So what happens when there is loss of cell-to-cell adhesion? So when there is loss of cell-to-cell adhesion, there is a wound, there is an epithelial injury. So cell-to-cell adhesion is lost. E-cadherin, cell-to-cell adhesion will be lost. So then what happens once there is cell-to-cell adhesion lost? Beta catenin um, beta-catenin dislocates from the connection with the E-catenin, and APC will also release beta-catenin. Beta-catenin will go into the nucleus, and this will promote cell cycle proliferation. So this occurs under the influence of WN2 molecules binding to the growth factor receptor. So WNT pathway is stimulated. So in the resting cell, cadherin is binding two cells. Beta-catenin is forming a complex with APC. There is no cell cycle progression. Once there is some cell injury, the intercellular adhesion is lost. Signals are given. APC releases beta-catenin. Beta-catenin goes to the nucleus and it will promote cell cycle proliferation. So obviously, what do you think will happen in a carcinogenesis or an oncogenesis? APC is not binding the beta-catenin because APC is mutated. So beta-catenin is in the molecule and continuously promotes proliferation. So the cell-to-cell contact is maintained by E-cadherin in a resting cell. There is loss of cell-to-cell contact when there is injury to epithelium. Once the healing of the wound occurs, the cell-to-cell contact is re-established. So this will lead to contact inhibition, which means healing of wound, cell-to-cell contact is established. Because of this, there is inhibition of cell proliferation. So this occurs under normal condition. So in cancer, what happens is, even if there is cell-to-cell contact, it is not leading to inhibition of cell proliferation. So there is loss of contact inhibition. So this can occur either because of mutation of this E-cadherin beta-catenin axis or because of loss of function of this tumor suppressor gene APC or some mutation in this WNT pathway. So here we have discussed the APC tumor suppressor gene as well as the other transducing molecules like E-cadherin and beta-catenin. So there is loss of contact because of cell-to-cell contact. There has to be inhibition of cell cycle progression in normal condition. But despite of contact, there is loss of inhibition. So there is the concept of contact inhibition, loss of contact inhibition in cancer. Moving on to the Warburg effect, the growth promoting metabolic alterations. I feel that this is one of the fascinating thing in the molecular, all the cancer hallmarks. Okay. So before we understand what is Warburg effect, and what is the metabolic alteration that occurs in a cancer cell, we will try to understand the normal energy metabolism. Otherwise, we won't understand Warburg effect. So, in a resting cell, the energy generation or cellular maintenance is uh, is, uh, is occurring because of pure oxidative phosphorylation. So, what happens in oxidative phosphorylation? Glucose is converted to CO2 in water. Glucose means nothing but carbon moiety. Glucose is C6 something something, so it is a carbon 6 moiety. So this generates abundant ATP, which is required to run all the basic cell functions. So in this process, all the carbon moieties are used up for ATP generation. Okay. So in a resting cell, which means it is not a dividing cell. However, in order to function normally, it needs energy. So the energy is derived from oxidative phosphorylation. So in this process, glucose is used. So all the carbon moieties are used up for ATP generation. However, if the cell needs to divide, what does a cell need when it has to divide and how will it meet the needs? So cell needs carbon moieties for what? For building blocks, for lipids and proteins. Once it is in the synthetic phase, all the parts of the cell cell components have to divide. So if they need to divide, it needs carbon moieties. So how is this achieved? By switching from oxidative phosphorylation to aerobic glycolysis. So what does the cell do? It increases the glucose and glutamine uptake. Only part of it is used for ATP generation. Rest of the carbon moieties is used for building blocks. So this is called Warburg effect. So not in a resting cell, which is not dividing, all the glucose that is taken up is used for ATP generation. Whereas in a cell that is dividing, only a small component, a few carbon moieties are gone for ATP generation. Rest is used for building blocks. So you can imagine what happens in the cancer cell. It will fix the Warburg effect. So all that it needs is cell cycle division. So it will switch from oxidative phosphorylation to aerobic glycolysis. See, what do you expect in a normal cell cycle? Once the cell division is over, again it should go back to the oxidative phosphorylation to function. But in cancer cell, it won't go back. Fixed. Therefore, this will ensure repeated cell division and growth of cell. So how is the Warburg effect achieved? These obviously it needs growth factors, nutrient and oxygen supplies, cellular signaling, and sensors that respond to exogenous factors. So what happens in the normal cells after cell division? Cell reverts to oxidative phosphorylation. What happens in the cancer cell? The Warburg effect is fixed due to oncogenes and loss of function of tumor suppressor genes. So I told you these metabolic functions are affected by growth factors, cell signaling pathways, and sensors. All these are nothing but oncogenes and tumor proto-oncogenes and tumor suppressor genes. So if it is gain of function of oncogenes and loss of function of tumor suppressor genes, Warburg effect is achieved. Like I told you before, STK11 controls the cell metabolism. If STK11 is lost, it will lead to permanently fixed Warburg effect. So this is a picture from Robbins in the quiescent cell. It is mainly ATP generation. In a growing cell, uh, the growth factor and all occurs and the glutamine uptake, only a little bit of ATP is generated, it will promote growth. So this will be fixed in a cancer cell. So moving on to the fourth hallmark. So we finished self-sufficiency, tumor suppressor, we finished Warburg effect. Now moving on to evasion of apoptosis. So we have seen that if there is a cell damage, it will be directed to apoptosis. So in cancer cell, the cancer cell has to escape from apoptosis, and it will lead to fixation of the DNA damage and the mutations and repeatedly divide. So we know that apoptosis has intrinsic and extrinsic pathway. In carcinogenesis, the intrinsic pathway abnormalities are the most common. Have a number of so this is the intrinsic and extrinsic pathway. So we have this BCL2 family of proteins, which are the anti-apoptotic. So if these are mutated, then it will lead to, so we have BCL2, BCLX, and MCL. This will lead to carcinogenesis. So the BCL2 family of proteins are the ones that are most commonly mutated in cancers. So BCL2 is an anti-apoptotic molecule. So when the BCL2 is overexpressed, it will lead to apoptosis. So T1418 translocation will lead to seen in follicular lymphomas. So in this condition, what happens is there is a translocation between immunoglobulin and BCL2, and this will lead to overexpression of BCL2. So this is anti-apoptosis. It prevents apoptosis. So there is increased cell cycle progression. So overexpression occurs in most hemopoietic and solid cancers. So what is the clinical application? Chemotherapy and radiation therapy kill cancer cells by inducing apoptosis. So we are understanding apoptosis because chemotherapy and radiotherapy will promote apoptosis of the cancer cells. These will be overexpressed in order to promote apoptosis. So again, you see here DNA damage, p53 response, and it will promote apoptosis by using the Baxen back. So overexpression of this we have already discussed. It's just another slide. So moving on to the fifth hallmark, the limitless replicative potential, the stem cell-like properties of cancer cells. So we know that there is with each for you to understand this, you have to remember the concepts of telomere and telomerase. Okay, so we know that there is telomeres are the ends of the chromosome. With every cell division, there will be shortening of the telomere. Okay, so once there is uh, after several cell divisions, when the telomere is completely damaged, what happens is the cell will detect this and this cell will be directed towards mitotic catastrophe, like what we told post-mitotic mode. So it will not divide anymore. Whereas you have this stem cells which will replicate unlimited stem cell like properties. They have telomerase. What will telomerase do? This enzyme will maintain the length of the telomere. So this shortening of telomere won't occur. The exposure of telomere ends won't occur. So P53 won't, there won't be any DNA, there won't be any exposed end for P53 to detect. So there is continuous replication, stem cell-like properties. So you can understand that in cancer cells, there will be upregulation of telomerase. So this will prevent shortening of telomeres, and this will promote continuous cell division, and this will lead to cancer. So evasion of senescence, the loss of cell cycle checkpoint, and evasion of mitotic crisis and self-renewal. This is what is occurring. So when there is from progressive telomere shortening, there will be permanent cell cycle arrest. And I've already told you mitotic crisis. So telomerase maintains the telomere length. So here is your normal pathway. So in the somatic cell, not a stem cell, we are talking about somatic cells. We don't have an active telomerase. So after some 50 to 70 cell division, the telomeres are shortened. So with the activity of P53, it will detect the shortened or damaged telomere ends, and this will activate the checkpoint and it will lead to permanent cell cycle arrest. Suppose if the P53 is not functioning, these exposed damaged ends, after not damaged, the exposed ends, what happens is these ends are exposed, right? There will be non-homologous disjunction. So here this exposed ends are joined. So they just don't, so this will lead to the formation of dicentric pathways. So so there is bridging and there is fusion, and then this will undergo cell cycle. So there will be new double stranded breaks. So this is not normal. Some abnormal breaks have occurred. Okay. So this will lead to, even when this occurs in a normal cell, there will, if the functioning is, if there is no activation of the telomerase, this will lead to mitotic catastrophe, which means the cell will be not entering the cell cycle. However, in a cancer cell, when there are double stranded breaks and there is telomerase reactivation, there is further maintenance of the telomere length, and this will lead to carcinogenesis. So shortened telomeres, P53 activates, leads to senescence. Even if there is fusion of these telomere ends and dicentric chromosomes, and they enter into the bridge and fusion and new double stranded break cycles. Even when that happens, when there is no telomerase activity in a normal cell, these cells are directed to mitotic catastrophe. However, in a cancer cell, the telomerase is reactivated and it will promote maintenance of telomere length and promote cell cycle progression. So the senescence, as we know, is mediated by P53 and retinoblastoma, and it will lead to cell cycle arrest. So what we have discussed, this double-stranded breaks and all, this is nothing but genomic instability. So this will lead to telomerase activation. So another point of limitless replicative potential is this self-renewal, right? So we've already discussed senescence and mitotic crisis, evasion of mitotic crisis. Then we will be discussing about self-renewal. So self-renewal is a property only of stem cells, not of somatic cells. But in cancer genes, like for example in CML, we have a T922 translocation in the stem cell. So the stem cell will undergo a number of divisions, number of cell divisions, and this stem cell will be undergoing some asymmetric cell division, which means it doesn't give rise to two mutated stem cells. A part of these will still be retaining the stem cell properties. A part of these will be a mutated progenitors. So this will be a self-renewing population with a low proliferative fraction. And then we have these progenitors which are mutated, which will have a high proliferative fraction, and these will contribute to the bulk of the tumor. These are in the backdrop, they will be self-renewing, but this will be the bulk of the tumor. So similar translocation can also affect the chromosomes 15 and 17, which involves this translocation called PML-RARA, and that leads to a leukemia which is called acute promyelocytic leukemia. So here also you have a self-renewing population and we have a bulk of the tumor. So to summarize, the normal cells lack the expression of telomerase. The shortened telomeres generated by cell division eventually activate the cell cycle checkpoints, lead to senescence, and place a limit on the number of divisions. If DNA repair pathways are inappropriately activated by shortened telomeres, this leads to mitotic catastrophe. So still we are saved from cancer. However, tumor cells will reactivate the telomerase and this will lead to immortality. I think we'll stop here and continue with angiogenesis and local invasion and metastasis and genomic instability in the next class. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you,
Thank you,
ma'am.
ma'am. Thank you, ma'am.